the Mayor, Glenn Brown, and of course the previous Mayor of Auckland, Jane Castiza. We've got not quite the numbers perhaps that the Mayor attracted to his funeral, which was 15,000. Half of Auckland were lining the area from St Matthew's Church, where he had the funeral service, up Hobson Street, along Karangahape Road, down Simon Street, underneath the Grafton Bridge, which he was the first to put a bridge across. He was the first for a lot of things. I call him in one of my chapters the Mayor of Arts and Crafts. I suppose Ben Brown will tell you that a mayor has to be a mayor of just about everything, particularly when it's reached this size. But in those days, the circuit of his funeral was probably the extent of Auckland. The wards had only just been developed during his 3 years. You had 1 year terms as mayor, and during his 3 years, a very busy time, one of those surges that are experienced when there's a bit of coin around. I'm not quite sure why there was, perhaps because the wards brought in extra revenue, but he built the first freshwater bars over in Albert Street. He developed Albert Park behind us. He brought in the trams, Grafton Bridge, of course, he developed, and I think the crown jewel of his administration, and indeed still of Auckland for my mind, is this building, this magnificent French Renaissance building, which was going to be a public library only until an extra bequest came in with Governor Gray, as we know, was the main donor of 9,000 books. And another man called Edward Costley. Both of them flanked, I'm pointing out there because we're underneath the foundation stone that my great-grandfather laid. We'll go out and have a look at it later. It was too noisy, unfortunately, with the busy Auckland that the current mayor has to control. I'd like to ask Ben Brown to launch this book from one mayor to another. Thank you very much for agreeing to do it. He's a busy man, and he's taken time out to give our great-grandfather. There's 6 at least great-grandchildren. There is a grandchild. Without Audrey, there'd be no book. I never knew I had a cousin until I moved to Kaikokariki, called Audrey Patchett. And Audrey provided me with a lot of the memorabilia, the wonderful poem, that pastiche that the mayor delivered to the council when he was in office. Very witty, not the sort of thing you would expect perhaps from mayors. Audrey provided me with a lot of the photographs. The sword that's on the back cover was the mayor's sword when he was a volunteer in the Auckland Rifles and a captain. So without Audrey, and of course, next to her, one more thing, Andrew, one of the great-grandchildren, my long-time friend and cousin Patricia Ryder, painted the cover. Then there were the others, there's Beverly, there's John, there's Barbara, who have I forgotten?
Everyone.
And Carol, they're the great-grandchildren. And then there are the great-great-grandchildren. I'm running out of fun, so sorry, you'll have to step up later. Mayor Brown, thank you.
So David, it's great for you to invite me along and to share this occasion. Very historic occasion. I have to say though that it's very rare that I feel that I'm underdressed for the occasion. Sensational actually. McGill Tarzan. I could actually have tried to outbilling you because I'm on the other side on Ferguson, and then it's spectacular. But you look really stunning today, and so I want to acknowledge you to all of those who are the successors of the Waddell name. It's great to see you, Audrey in particular. So Paget, I think there is a strong connect, if that is a Howard connect. I know there's a bunch of connects through to Howard here, of course. The original William was very much part of the Fencibles. I know and have studied the Fencibles well because being a boy from that side of town, I worked in the Howard Historical Village, which basically repositioned a lot of the old Fencible homes from around Panmure and Howard under the leadership of Eleanor Roche, another great historian. But David, we're here to celebrate your work today. and your thoughts and feelings and reflections on William Waddell as our Mayor of Auckland way back when, in 1883 to 1886. Now, we're joined by three legends within the Auckland community. First of all, I want to acknowledge Dame Kath. She doesn't like to be called Dame Kath, she's Kath, but an outstanding mayor in her own right, and an outstanding Governor General too, and a great mate of mine. Why don't we acknowledge Dame Kath here? We're really covering the whole gamut of it, because this fellow here is Dr. Graham Bush. And, David will know that there's no way that there's much that hasn't been written throughout the history of our great city and of the operation of its council than by Graham. He's been a wonderful contributor to us in the story of Auckland, now partnered here by David. But I want to acknowledge you, Dr. Graham. You've done some wonderful work, and he likes trams. Now, some of you wouldn't know there's a third legend here, and maybe you wouldn't have seen much of him because he's sort of kept quite a low public profile, aside from the fact that his name's seriously out there. And if William was a very strong proponent of arts, then this man has done some fabulous work for us in the area of performing arts. Roger Hall, a great playwright in Auckland and New Zealand, so can you acknowledge him? Anyhow, David, you took a lot of my speech, but that's okay. There are a couple of things that are symbolical or sort of symptomatic of David's early beginnings that are reflective of the many of the mayors who have not only been leaders of Auckland, but of the many iterations of boroughs and councils. There were 29 odd borough councils, I think, at one point with Graham. And so he had come from very humble beginnings. I really like your reflections, David, on him as a drummer boy. And then secondly, his trade was as a baker. And became quite a famous baker. I mean, obviously, he became such a famous and well-known baker, he must have made some very good product. That in the end, he was, and elected as a councillor, was very popular as a councillor in Auckland, and then elected over 3 separate terms, and I think on the last occasion, unopposed, as the mayor of our city. But I love the thing that he said, and Kath will really relate to this. In his inauguration speech, when he first became the mayor, he said, "I'd rather be known as a working mayor than a talking mayor." And I do. That's right, yes. But you want to be known for your actions rather than your words. I mean, none of us are church. So the fact that he had a very high focus on being a man of action, and if you have a look through and read David's account of him as a councillor, and in his early years, he did the hard yards. He served not just an apprentice as a baker, but he was involved in every single organisation that was going. And therefore, his community, the wider Auckland Council, as it then was in the city, grew to know him through trust in the work that he did in the community. And he built that through his excellent years of service, 7 years as a councillor, and then continued on through his work as the mayor of the city, a man of action rather than of words. Although he was known for the old pithy comment. You reflected on the fact, David, that he did his outstanding work really in parks, arts, but also transport. It's great to connect back to Graham. Now, Graham's real passion is trams and light rail. And then, of course, it has to be known that William was the mayor when trams were first introduced to Auckland. We should never have got rid of them. Yeah. Should never have got rid of them. Imagine where we were if we had trams now. So he actually showed that not just a man of action, but also a visionary leader. And then, of course, was responsible for the bridge across the Grafton Gully. Our first great bridge, and still operative, if you can get on it when the buses don't run. Didn't live a very long life. It's not unusual for men and women of those days. Made 56 and then died of circumstances. I want to just conclude with what I think is a beautiful reflector for the family, and I want to acknowledge you all. It's wonderful for you to be able to carry forward into the future generations. And there's a couple of young doctors coming through over here doing PhDs. And this is something for you to carry forward into the years ahead as being great sons and daughters of our city. This is what was said of him in an editorial in the newspaper at the time on his passing, and as David said, 15,000 people, half the population turned out. I mean, a huge funeral for Sir Doug Meyer Robinson when he passed away. Well, this was pro rata, a much, much larger affair, reflecting the respect that the community had for William at that time. Auckland has had at its foundation many citizens who have proved their love for it, who have shown by devotion to public service their desire that it should progress and that its civic institution should be well conducted. But probably no one could be named who had given so great an amount of time, energy and downright hard work to the interests of the citizens than Mr. Waddell, whose death we have here today recorded. It will, we feel sure, be many years before Auckland has another so willing to work for the public good in connection with our local bodies, and who is able to give to our city so large an amount of attention. That is a wonderful testimony. Why don't we put our hands together for William and Axel? That is something that should sit on the desk of every mayor and now and in the future. So look, it's very much my honour to, on behalf of you all and our city, as this book will go into all the libraries and all of the school libraries and into the many, many private collections of books, to congratulate you, Dave. It's a beautiful read, and it's an easy read. So for someone in my position, I found it fascinating. You have written with real pride and privilege and honour about your great-great-granddad. And so you, congratulations, and to all of the family. It's really wonderful to share the memory of this great mayor of our city. So David, congratulations. No. And I get very much.
Area that hasn't been touched on today, and that's trains. I mentioned trains a couple of times. But I live in Paikakariki, a little railway village, down at the other end of the North Island, and one of my colleagues and friends down there is Dr. Michael O'Leary. Both of us have a passion for trains, and as a thank you to the Mayor, we've got a signed copy of our rail journey around New Zealand, with poems by Michael and prose by me. And when Michael heard that I was coming up here to talk to the Mayor, he said, I want to write an ode to Len Brown. It's only 14 lines. It's only about trains, right? And it says, without apologies, but with thanks to Percy Shelley. Oh, Len Brown, thou essence of Tamaki's being, from whose unseen presence cars leave lead fumes and are driven like tin ghosts fleeing, yellow, black, pale silver and hectic red, citizens CO2 stricken multitudes. Len, O thou who would chariotist to their destination instead by railway, as their city's winged leads grow, taken from their motorway living grave, until thine azure traffic through the CRL shall flow, now moving o'er the dreaming Auckland earth, and fill driving sweet trains like flocks who breathe in air, with living hues past Meadowbank and One Tree Hill, wild spirit, which are now moving by electric rail everywhere, Britomart, Papakura, Swanson, Onehunga, Manukau, here, oh here. The book is normally $37.95. It's $30 today.
Ever the salesman.
A signed copy, of course. If you haven't got any money, take my card and get in touch. Thank you very much. That was very, very nice of you.
And we're having...
going up to the cafe. We've got